Welcome, I'm Glen Anderson, producer and host of this TV series, Glen's Parallax Perspectives. This series explores a wide variety of issues related to peace, social and economic justice, the environment, and nonviolent social change. We especially provide opportunities for the public to hear voices and viewpoints that are rarely heard in mainstream media. Mainstream media, politicians, and culture see the world in conventional ways. The establishment is stuck in how they see the world. In order to solve problems, we need to see things differently. This TV series, Glen's Parallax Perspectives, can help us see things differently so we can solve problems at all levels, from the local to the global. This series is called Glen's Parallax Perspectives. Here's what the word parallax means. Put one finger in front of your nose and another finger farther away. Close one eye, then open that eye and close the other. Your fingers will seem to move. This is called a parallax view. This TV series invites you to look at issues from fresh perspectives. Also, see much information about the issues that we cover in this TV series and previous episodes of this series at my blog, www.parallaxperspectives.org. And now I invite you to watch this month's program. Welcome to this month's interview on Glen's Parallax Perspectives TV series. A savvy guest and I will help you take bold, positive actions on issues that you care about. The American people know that serious problems exist. Public opinion polls keep showing that increasing majorities of people are saying that our nation is on the wrong track. So what do we do about it? Take small steps only, or solve the big problems? This month's TV interview is positive, upbeat, creative, and encouraging. Besides working to stop what we oppose, what if we also worked equally hard to accomplish what we want instead? So we have a savvy guest who will help us explore this topic. I'm delighted that Melanie Bennett is the perfect guest to discuss today's topic. She and Arthur Kanigis were guests on my April 2022 TV program, which urged us to get beyond narrow nationalism and see ourselves as citizens of the whole world. Melanie and Arthur produced an amazing film titled The World Is My Country. We'll discuss this during the interview that you're watching now. I have enjoyed connecting with Melanie on something else that she co-produces, the People-Powered Planet podcast, where people explore bold ways to build a world that works for everybody. So welcome, Melanie. I'm looking forward to connecting with you during this hour.
So great to be here, Glenn.
Thanks. So more and more nowadays, public opinion polls keep showing the American people say our nation is on the wrong track. And during this TV interview, we'll do three things. We'll explore some ways in which our nation is on the wrong track, but we'll also encourage people to choose bold solutions to solve those big problems and turn things around in major ways. And we'll provide insights and encouragement for actually creating a better nation and a better world. So often people say the system is broken, but it's not broken, it's really fixed. It's fixed in a different sense of the word fixed. The system is designed to serve people who already have economic and political power at the expense of ordinary people and at the expense of the environment. In 2013, U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren spoke to a nationwide meeting of labor union members, and she told them, quote, "The American people know that the system is rigged against them," unquote. So the rigged system really is very firmly entrenched, but as a Turkish proverb says, no matter how far you've gone down a wrong road, turn back. So during this hour, we'll discuss turning back from the several wrong roads that we're on. Melanie, how do you think and feel about that assessment? Is this, do you see that context, or what could you add to this?
I love the vision of here we're going down this road and almost everyone in the car can see that there's a cliff ahead. So a couple people, maybe they're asleep. And so we're just, what do? We stop the car. What do? We get out, we block the road so other people don't fall off the road. We work together to solve this problem and take action, because it's an emergency, that type of thing. And we're very intelligent. Human beings are very smart. We can do this. So.
Yeah. And we can do this collaboratively, which I know is one of the big themes that you want to emphasize during this hour, is the collaboration, the partnership in doing this together. So I want to read a short quotation, and then that I think summarizes our situation nowadays. Here's the quotation, and then I'll tell you who said it and when. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country. So that's a quotation. It sounds like our current crisis, but actually that statement was a century and a half old. This is what Abraham Lincoln said as president on December 1, 1862 in a State of the Union address. So the crisis that we're in now is not the first time we've been in a crisis. And public opinion polls keep showing that on issue after issue, the public wants stronger and more progressive public policies than the governments produce, whether it's federal, state, or local governments. The public really does want to protect the environment and the climate vigorously, but governments either do nothing or they take only minor, timid steps. The public wants to cut the military budget and use the savings to meet human needs, but Congress keeps failing to do that. Congress keeps adding more to the military budget and making human needs even suffer further. The public wants to get big money out of political election campaigns, but governments keep refusing to do that. And the public wants high quality health care for every person, but governments keep failing to do that. So this is case after case after case where this pattern is holding true. Decades ago, Senator Robert Kennedy famously said, "Some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not?" And I also like what David Graeber said. He said, "The ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make and could just as easily make differently." So these problems seem huge, and they are huge, but we actually can turn things around. And I'm glad that we'll be talking about that. It's obvious that these problems exist, but nearly all incumbents in both of the big political parties fail to take strong, effective actions. Voters must replace all of the do-nothing incumbents, as well as the incumbents that are making things actively worse. But a lot of incumbents just fail to do what needs to be done. And I agree with what one of the guests on my TV program said quite a number of years ago, that only 5% of democracy is about voting, but 95% of democracy is about grassroots organizing to actually change the realities. The public really does want bold, humane changes. Elections will not produce them. The bold, humane change we want will occur only if ordinary people organize bold grassroots movements and start and organize with grassroots nonviolent strategies. So Melanie, your take on that?
Yes, there's a lot of work to be done. The will of the people is well acknowledged, but nothing's being done. So we do have the capacity. We can do this. As Helen Keller said, and I'll quote her, "Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement." So yeah. It's so important that we know we can do this first.
Yeah, we have I have some good quotations about hope that I'll post to my blog. And my understanding of hope is not a statistical probability that things will get better, but it's a realization that we can make things better. The option is there, and we have to act upon that. So that's what hope is about. And that optimism quote from Helen Keller is crucial to understand this. So I'm glad you mentioned that. When we were talking on the phone to prepare for this interview, Melanie, you told me that the system and the culture impose limitations and excuses, and we need to reject those and boldly move ahead. Some people want to avoid the hard realities. And could you give a couple of examples briefly about systemic or cultural problems that trap us and the alternatives that can free us? And we'll discuss some of these later in the program, but could you just stake out a bit of territory now?
Well, I would like to, of course, we're going to talk about this later, but being in the domination system is almost pre-recorded what's going to happen, because you can't even make a good decision. You're forced to make a bad decision for the world and maybe even for yourself. So I'd like to say that I've always said that before I make a decision, I think, is this good for the world or bad for the world? So each person has a capacity to change things. I don't know, it seems that sometimes people think, well, okay, I'm one individual, I can't do anything, and that's not the case. And I'll share some examples later. So.
Yeah, it's like I'm only one person, but next to me there's another person, and next to me is another person, and if we get all of us together, we're a huge majority.
Exactly.
I believe, and I know you believe also, the majority of people want to make these bold changes that we'll be talking about during the program, and so numbers are on our side.
Yeah.
But nowadays, however, a great many people feel powerless. Many people feel powerless compared to the big businesses and the government. Many employees feel powerless on their jobs. Some men try to compensate for feeling powerless by trying to control their wives or trying to control their children. And some men try to compensate for their feelings of powerless by buying a big truck so they can tower over all the small vehicles on the road, or buy guns. And a lot of people vote for right-wing politicians who will keep women and people of color in subservient roles. So people react in bad ways to feeling powerless. We need to understand why people feel powerless and deal with those root causes. And I believe that people vent their frustrations and their feelings of powerless in ways that cause society to suffer. So we need to fix systemically, and that's what we're talking about. Can you help us in any other ways to understand these feelings of powerless and how we can empower ourselves and other people in our society to solve problems instead of making problems worse?
Yes, I think people feel they don't have a voice. It's a frustration. It's then you lash out. You're doing what you can to make your point or influence. I think an important thing is respect. Respect for each other and respect for ourselves is going to help us with that. Because we're in the domination system, we're taught to push down another person, and that's how we get our power, because it's the power of the mighty, which is, I'll tell you in a little bit more about that, but basically it's pushing us to be our worst selves, the domination system.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned this earlier in the interview, and again just now, and this is actually next on our agenda. So I've appreciated in the past hearing you explain what that domination society is, or the domination system, and what the partnership society is. Can you explain those two systems, those two models, so that our TV viewers will understand the contrast and how we can move ahead? Melanie.
I love explaining this. Because I just learned this myself. This was a book put out in 1987 by Dr. Rian Eisler.
I read the book.
Yes, world changing. She is a systems scientist, historian, and futurist. She's just full of knowledge, and she's doing great work right now as we speak. And basically, we're talking about the road we were going down. Turns out there's an ancient road that's been traveled so many times that is so much better as a system. It's not perfect. It's not a utopia. There's certainly still some violence and things like that. But here's the difference. So it's on a social scale. Just picture a scale. You have one side, the domination hierarchy. It's very in and out groups. So here's the in groups are at the top, and the out groups are the rest of us. It's based on violence and war and pushing people down, keeping people down. It takes a lot of energy. It's very it's not an efficient system, because you have to pay attention to keeping these people down and not flourishing, and you have less creativity. Whereas on the other side, which is partnership, again, not a utopia. However, there is a system where for example, you're in a company and the respect goes both ways. The accountability goes both ways. So the power goes both ways. So what does a person who is the manager in that type of organization like? They're trying to get the people who are working there to flourish, human flourishing. And one of our guests, Rosie von Lila, speaks about human flourishing, which is critical. So you don't step on other people and feel like you have to lash out. So this whole system, and you can learn so much about it by just reading The Chalice and the Blade, which came out so long ago. I hadn't heard about it, but now that I've read it, it has opened my eyes to the possibility. It makes me feel good that in fact, they're finding more and more evidence in antiquity where they've uncovered archaeological digs, for example, in Turkey and Crete with the Minoan society, of these societies, whereas the houses were, there was no differentiation in houses. There wasn't the people buried with weapons and things like that. There wasn't evidence of war. But these were, people are like, well, those were early. No, these are highly sophisticated societies with a language we haven't even been able to comprehend. It's called Linear A. So this is exciting news for people who feel like, oh my gosh, we're stuck, we're going just this way. Oh, back to you, Glen.
Yeah. and it's egalitarian in a number of ways. Women are valued as people, and women could be leaders, and women are not just to be used and oppressed, but partnership among the whole population. Everybody's in on it.
Yeah, people didn't even think of that. It was just, you're important, we all have different jobs we have to do, and we'll survive better together.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't even a question of that. And then there's lots of evidence of valuing birth and creation and life and nature and all this part of the ecosystem that we need to live in, and we need to learn to live in, which we're not doing now. So
right. And I want to again mention the title of that book and the author. I read the book quite a number of years ago because a friend recommended it, and I read it and wow, this is really as good as what she was telling me it was. And the title of the book is The Chalice and the Blade. Chalice is CHALICE, and the Blade. The author is Riane Eisler, RIANE, last name EISLER, and her website is her name, RIANEEISLER.com. So check out.
And the Center for Partnership, that's another place you can go. And she's on YouTube, she's on interviews everywhere.
Yeah, I was pleased to see recent stuff that she's been doing. Even though she had written the book years ago, she's still active.
Yeah, and by the way, she was on our podcast. It was such an honor. I was so pleased. And we have another person talking about partnership, Rosie von Lila, who I recommend you watch that too. Okay,
I want to lay out another angle here about one of the main themes here of today's program is about, instead of settling for timid incrementalism, let's really set truly bold goals that'll be sustainable and just and fair, and work toward those bold goals instead of settling for timid things. I want to just lay out the case here for this, and then I'll ask you for your insights about that. So the problems that we have, whether it's environmental damage, climate disruption, war as a system, and so forth, are gigantic problems, and so they require gigantic solutions. And these solutions then have to be very bold, because a timid solution is not enough for a gigantic problem. In the United States, liberals keep asking what is politically feasible. And so they ask for small changes based on the current mindset of American politics and American political ideology. They ask for small, politically feasible incremental steps that maybe they hope the giant political and economic powers will allow us to move in these small ways. But in Latin America, for a long time, people have been demanding bold reforms, and they've been agitating boldly. In the United States, our modest reforms are watered down and deferred, And I believe we want real progress. We have to be more assertive like the Latin Americans are. Say, no, here's the bold goal that we really want, and we're going to agitate, and we need to agitate nonviolently, of course, to get there. So instead of limiting ourselves to what the elites tell us is politically feasible, we need to change our vision about what's politically feasible. We actually need to move the goalposts. Say, let's go way out here and do this. So you seem to agree with this. When we were talking on the phone to prepare for the interview, your thinking was similar. Can you share insights of your own about this?
Well, definitely when there is an emergency, we have to take action, and we do better together. So what is the emergency? What is priority number one? It's the nuclear weapon problem. In my view, that we take care of that right away, nip it in the bud. We have a bold action going on. Can I go ahead and say that?
Yes.
A small group of people, just a few people, got together, and they did the International Committee for Abolishing Nuclear Weapons. They were following a model that worked, and they just got together. We're going to see what we can do to abolish nuclear weapons. And now that organization, ICAN for short, and it's International Committee for Abolishing Nuclear Weapons, but it's ICANW.org, has done something amazing. They are not only, oh, here we go. Not only did they put a treaty, an actual treaty out to the world that is being signed, and well, actually in January 22nd, 2021, this treaty became international law. So all the countries that had signed on, all 50 of them that had signed on to it, have to follow the rules. And it's not just about, oh, we don't want nuclear weapons. It's about, you will not have or help or assist or transport nothing, nada in your country. So there's a quick little story, side note, that I was talking to a gentleman who was part of the, actually working for one of the 27 companies that are actually making the nuclear parts for these nuclear weapons, Lockheed Martin. I told him that, listen, if you were working for Lockheed Martin in Mexico or in Cuba, those are two countries of the 68 countries that have signed this treaty. They have cited, I'm sorry, ratified. So in other words, they're following all the rules in it. And if you were working in Mexico or Cuba or any of these other countries that have ratified the TPNW, you could be arrested. You could be fined because you're doing something illegal. It's amazing. The circle is closing on these companies. And just a side note, GE was changed back in the 80s, was working on nuclear weapons, and people said no. So they stopped.
Right, I remember that. There's a big nonviolent action at a General Electric manufacturing plant in Pennsylvania where they were making nuclear, well, it was the missiles, cruise missiles or something of that sort. And there's a big protest, and we got a movement going, and people worldwide were starting to boycott General Electric because they were making nuclear weapons.
Exactly.
And General Electric thought, holy crap, this is going to cost us a lot of money. We'd be better off ditching that product rather than lose all these billions of dollars of revenue. So
and the new one, yeah, see, and the new one is Honeywell. The new one is Honeywell. You want to stop that. And then bold action, just to continue, just to finish. So, okay, these are the countries signing on, and people are like, I'm only one person. No, gather together more people. So we have on our website, you can endorse and honor the TPNW because you sign the declaration that we have there. And then can I go say what you're doing? Okay, so what you're doing is you are actually finding out first if you are actually giving money to nuclear weapons, if you are actually funding with your own money nuclear weapons. And if you go to our website, theworldismycountry.com, and then you'll see take action. You'll see it right there at the top that you go to this website, don't bank Don't bank on the bomb, which is with ICANN, or weapons-free funds, and you'll find out whether your mutual funds, the funds that you have, the funds that your retirement fund is in, or you find out if your bank, what they're doing and how much they're spending on nuclear weapons. And we can focus beeline on this particular issue. I think everyone would agree. The fact is right now, we are, people want to hide from it. And we're thinking, oh, it was taken care of back in the 80s, but now it's resurged. We have so many so much money going towards nuclear weapons, and it's ridiculous. So I think once people become aware, but not to be afraid, not afraid, but willing to do something about it. We all can do something to get off this road. Get off this road.
and we'll talk about the treaty and the prohibition of nuclear weapons again a few minutes from now. It shows up again on the agenda. But I want to mention one of the things that makes it powerful is that they have so many very bold verbs. There's a whole lot of active verbs. You can't produce it, you can't research it, you can't transfer it, you can't hold on to them in your country, you can't do this or this or this or this or this. Lots of verbs. And when they developed the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, they based it upon the treaty that bans chemical weapons that has been overwhelmingly successful, and they pulled a lot of those verbs and copied them into this treaty. But we'll cover this a bit further in a moment. I want to lift up another bold example that you mentioned to me on the phone when we were talking about preparing for the program. A week ago, you told me that a great example of boldness is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And of course, Eleanor Roosevelt was a great champion promoting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And the United Nations General Assembly adopted them in 1948. So these are really worldwide. And you told me on the phone that people need to know what these rights are and to exercise them, including when they're being challenged by people who have official power, right? We need to protect them from the bottom up. And can you tell our viewers something about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights?
Well, you can find what the articles are. There's 30 articles. You can look them up, and then you can read through them, and it's a lot. But I think it's important to know the gist of it. So I asked my friend to play on his piano, Joy to the World, and kind of made lyrics so you can actually know, like, you are born free, entitled to rights, life, liberty, and security. I don't know if you want to, anyway, so you get this kind of ditty in your head, and I'm hoping there's a songwriter out there who can really do some rap or something, because a lot of people know rap easily and they can repeat it, but to know these rights is so critical. How phenomenal to put in your head that we're all human beings. We all have these rights. You're born free, entitled to these rights. So I think it's so important that people at least know about the Declaration of Human Rights. And our star in our movie had something to do with getting it passed, because there was a block in agreeing with the nations, and then Gary had 20,000 people in the Velodrome d'Hiver in Paris, and the kind of influenced getting it going. But so many people worked so hard on that. The Declaration of Human Rights is an amazing document. Right,
and Melanie sent me the link to that 93-second musical piece where on the screen the rights show up in words. And it's like a very impressive list, and in 93 seconds, we didn't have time to put it into this program, but I'll provide the link on my blog. And
just a fun way to learn it.
It's quick. 93 seconds is all it takes. So the video that we're producing now for this TV interview, I will post to my blog, and along with that, I'll be posting a lot of supplemental material that we don't have time to get into during this hour, and I'll tell you more about that later. I want to lift up another bold thing. We live in this world, this domination system, where war is an inherent part of it. It's violence from people who have political and economic power dumping on everybody else. And it's been said that truth is the first casualty of war, but it's also true that almost all the other victims of war, casualties, are innocent people. So it's a real abusive system. And a major issue that really needs bold, humane progress, the theme of our TV interview here, is for American people to change how our government interacts with other nations. During most of our nation's history, we had relatively few wars. In 1947, our government changed the name of the Department of War to the Department of Defense. And defense has been a euphemism that's allowed the government to conduct many wars all over the world, dozens all over the world since 1947. And we've been pretty much at war ever since then, and often multiple wars at the same time. The Constitution says that we can't go to war unless Congress actually declares the war. But the last time Congress actually declared a war was 3/4 of a century ago in 1941 for World War II. And since 1947, Congress has abdicated its constitutional responsibility and allowed presidents to start and conduct wars all over the world. Congress doesn't declare wars, but they keep funding them. They keep passing budgets for more and more wars. So Congress is in cahoots with presidents in that abusive domination system. Millions of Americans want to demilitarize our foreign policy and replace the war system with honest diplomacy so that we can solve problems internationally without using violence. Powerful forces, big business, and especially the ones that manufacture nuclear weapons, fund the election campaigns for presidents and Congress members. And as a result, check out this quotation here. President Reagan, Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger, staked out a global turf for the U.S. to militarize. He stated, quote, "There's no corner of the world so remote, no nation so insignificant that it does not represent a vital interest of the United States," unquote. So ironically, this claim for the United States' right to dominate the whole world came from the Reagan administration, which said it opposed big government, right? But they want the biggest government of all to oppress the whole world. And that's been really U.S. policy ever since the end of World War II. War and other forms of violence just do not work. The last war the United States actually won was World War II. Since then, we've lost long wars to poor nations, including Vietnam and a 20-year war in Afghanistan, one of the poorest nations. We couldn't even win that after this enormous amount of weapons and billions of dollars and bombs and stuff. Military solutions only make problems worse. And I agree with quotations here. I'll read from some well-informed people. David Dellinger said, "Just as it would be stupid to plant weeds and try to harvest vegetables, so it would be stupid to encourage the lies, conscription, and murder of war and hope to produce democracy, freedom, and brotherhood. War is a Trojan horse from which emerge at home the enemies that destroy us." Marcus Raskin and Carl Levin wrote, "American democracy is decaying because freedom has been mortgaged to bear the costs of empire." And the insightful Howard Zinn said, "War is manufactured by political leaders who then must make a tremendous effort by enticement, by propaganda, by coercion to mobilize a normally reluctant population to go to war." Albert Einstein wrote, "Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding." And the last one I'll read here is Jeremy Cahill wrote, "U.S. policy has been its own worst enemy. We've created the very threats we claim to be fighting." So there's a lot of wisdom on that side of things, and we need to recognize that military solutions just make problems worse, and we need to boldly replace the war system with a peace system and a system that supports human rights and nonviolence. And so I'll propose a bold solution now, and then in about 2 minutes, Melanie, you'll have a chance to respond to this proposal. And you've heard me talk about this before. But we really need a nonviolent national defense, and we need world citizenship, of course, as you know, and we'll talk about in a moment. instead of narrow nationalism. Nonviolent defense, civilian-based resistance in nonviolent resistance is the kind of bold alternative we need to replace the status quo of military violence. And my May 2022 TV program, the episode on Glen's Parallax Perspective TV series, provides powerful information and inspiration to significantly improve the US's national security by, ironically, demilitarizing our national defense. So instead of military violence, we could defend our nation better through carefully planned strategies of nonviolent resistance to protect our nation against any nation that would try to invade us. And besides eliminating the danger of nuclear war, a nonviolent national defense would provide better security without all the downsides, including environmental damage, that violent militarism causes. So my May 2022 TV program explains how nonviolent national defense could actually work. I don't have time to explain it here. I spent an hour on that program explaining it. But we have to be open-minded and bold and creative. And the program is 1 hour long, but I wrote an article that fleshes that out and gives a lot more examples of people in other nations actually using nonviolent resistance successfully to repel invaders and to protect themselves. So there's an article that I'll be posting to my blog. The blog post about nonviolent national defense includes the link to the TV video and also the link to the article about this. And it's on my blog, parallaxperspectives.org. I think I can post that put it up on the share screen so you can see where that, if you visit the blog, and Parallax has 1 R and 2 L's, parallaxperspectives.org, then you can click the TV programs part and you'll see the program that Melanie was on earlier this year about world citizenship. You'll see this about nonviolent national defense and lots of other good stuff there besides the issue categories. So anyway, that's my rant on this. Do you have a response to this, Melanie? I'll be doing this for your program in January.
January 11th.
Yeah, we'll do that. Go ahead.
Come see Glen Anderson on the People Powered Planet podcast, and it's at 10 o'clock Pacific, 5 UTC. So yes, that's very exciting. And then I wanted to respond by saying thank you for doing that. Yes, we need nonviolence. We need people to know the power and how much more powerful nonviolence is compared to a violent reaction. And as they say, if you're trying to be on the same level playing field. So this government, whichever government, has built up all these weapons and things like that, and you're trying to do on the same. No, you have to do a different method, and we also had George Lakey, and you recommended the Gene Sharp book From Dictatorship to Democracy, which is phenomenal. All these, and your work doing that, it's just great. The more people that know about that, the better. We're taught violence. That's how the child is doing something wrong, just hit them and they'll realize that's wrong.
Yeah. What you're doing is you're teaching the kid that violence is the way to do things, and that's the wrong message. I just checked our time. We're tight on time here. The next thing on our agenda is world citizenship, which is a hot issue, and you got the poster behind you. Could you cover that in like 2 minutes?
Yes, 2 minutes.
And I'll put the website up on the screen.
Yes. Okay, a lot of great information at the website Glen's putting up on the screen. Definitely recommend watching our movie so you can really understand viscerally exactly what we're talking about and how it came about and the history of world citizenship. But this amazing, dynamic, courageous, brave, bold man named Gary Davis, Garry Davis, took bold action because he saw what he did during the war. He bombed Brandenburg, these people, he didn't know how many people he killed. So how devastating. A lot of soldiers come back realizing what the war means, what you're talking about. What are you asking people to do when you tell them to go to war? And it's a horror, it's just a horror. And so he said, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to give up. I love the United States, but I'm going to give up my precious document, my passport, and become a citizen of the world. So dynamic, incredible story about how that came about and how he was motivated to do that, and how we can all be motivated to take bold action. And so watch the movie. Also go to our website, find out how you can take actions, different things. But it's the idea, what is world citizenship? You can be a citizen of your city, your county, your state, your country, and also you can be a citizen of the world. What does that mean? It means you're taking more of a love for the planet. You're thinking ahead. You're thinking of the future generations. You're thinking, oh my gosh, if we destroy the air over here, it's going to destroy the air over there. If we bomb, we set off these nuclear bombs, we're destroying, they're suicide machines that we're allowing to exist because we're not sure how to get rid of them. Well, you can stop them. You can help stop them for sure. Yeah. So anyways, how much time do you have?
That's about it.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Because our next, you actually have introduced the next topic, which we talked about already a fair amount, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. This is another bold remedy, just like world citizenship is a bold remedy. Abolishing nuclear weapons is a bold remedy, and we support the incremental steps that are useful. We can take our weapons off the hair trigger alert. We can declare no first use as a policy, and the United States has always had a policy of saying we reserve the right to begin a nuclear war. No president has ever refused the option of being able to start a nuclear war. Congress keeps refusing to pass legislation to prohibit first use. So there are some incremental steps we can take, but the real remedy is to abolish them. And we've talked a fair amount already on the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. I want to give a bit more information about this. In May 1946, the brilliant physicist Albert Einstein warned us. He said, "The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything except our thinking. Thus, we are drifting toward catastrophe beyond conception. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if mankind is to survive." And that's what we're about here. Mm-hmm. And the bold solution we need then is to abolish nuclear weapons. And both of us have been working on to support the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. That's one of the things we've been working on here at the Olympia Coalition to abolish nuclear weapons in Olympia, Washington, and our statewide Nuclear Weapons Coalition, and lots of other stuff. Fortunately, the nations of the world, not the 9 nations that have nuclear weapons, but lots of other nations are already on track to push that. In July 2017, a huge majority of the United Nations General Assembly, it was 122 out of the 193 nations, passed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And so then it went out to the nations of the world for ratification. And as of now, we're taping this in October 11th of 2022. As of today, 68 nations have ratified it, which means they are bringing that treaty in and applying it to their own laws. So their own laws are having to be changed in order to accommodate the very, very strict requirements of the treaty, with lots of active verbs in it. And tell us just a bit more. We've said a lot, but if you can do just a bit more, and I'll put the website up on the screen for the nation that promoted the treaty and won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017.
Yes, and the executive director, Beatrice Finn, there was a panel discussion when all of the parties got together, the first party meeting of all the countries. There were 66 at that time, but now there's 68. So everybody was, okay, what do you do about people talking, well, we need nuclear weapons because it's a deterrent. And she said, and I thought this was brilliant, she said, do you trust each of the 9 men that have these nuclear, send them off. We've had so many mistakes. There was the man who saved the world, Lieutenant Colonel Petrov of the Russian Air Force, was credited with saving the world. There's so many incidents, I don't know if you know the story real quick. missiles were coming in. It turns out those missiles were the cloud reflection off this cloud, an atmospheric thing, but their computers picked them up as missiles coming to Russia to destroy Russia. And so his quick thinking saved the world by not alerting his superior, who would have actually retaliated to this false alarm. So all sorts of danger out there, and the more we keep these on going, and the more possibilities there are. So we need to take action. It's it's just a simple thing.
Yeah.
Stop the car.
Yeah.
Get out.
Okay. Okay, thanks. We are tight on time, so I'm going to be more brief than I had wanted to be in the next few things that I want to say. But one is the environment is in serious problem. The climate keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and the global nations get together and they have these COP global climate summits, and they talk and they don't take meaningful actions. And this happens over and over and over and over again. Now we're up to the 27th one coming up very soon. It'll be in Egypt. And I mean, they need to take action, and they keep failing. And the fossil fuel companies are very well represented there, and they lobby the hell out of these nations. And a lot of nations, including the United States, have blocked meaningful action. So it goes on and on and on. But the Dalai Lama said, because we all share this small planet Earth, we have to learn to live in harmony and peace with each other and with nature. This is not a dream, but a necessity. And Wendell Berry said, whether we and our politicians know it or not, nature is a party to all of our deals and decisions, and she has more votes, a longer memory, and a sterner sense of justice than we do. And I've got quotations from a couple other people who say we have to recognize the sacredness of Mother Earth and ecosystems and stuff. So we need very strong environmental laws and policies, and we need to transition rapidly away from fossil fuels. Joe Biden campaigned for president with promises to take care of the climate. Instead, he is vigorously promoting more oil drilling and more exports of crude oil from the United States. And they're all going in the wrong direction. One of the bold things that we can do is recognize legal rights for nature, which several nations in Latin America have done. They've written it into their constitution. What happens is you have some environmental problem, and people will sue the government or sue a company for some horrible abuse of the environment, and your case gets thrown out of court because you're only a person, you don't have legal standing. And so these constitutions in some Latin American countries say that ecosystems have legal standing. They can sue the companies or the government. And I did a TV program about this in January 2022. I'll put the link to that in my blog, but we have to recognize legal rights for nature. I also want to mention part of the context that we're in is every sector of our society has violence embedded in it. Our foreign policy and our criminal justice system rely upon violence. Our economy is violent to everybody who's below the middle class. Racism and sexism are inherently violent. The list goes on and on and on. We need very bold reforms that will be grounded in nonviolent principles that we can activate through laws, policies, and cultural shifts. We need to change our culture so the culture will no longer think violence is what solves problems. We have movies where the movie ends in a gunfight, a car chase, or blowing things up, and that has been called the myth of redemptive violence, that a big violent thing is what saves us. And this is how people think wars go, and nuclear weapons will save us. I mean, that's what they're telling us now. And that's baloney. And so we need to have very bold reforms, and we need to think creatively and organize from the grassroots up, because all the top-down people, the corporations and the politicians and all that top-down stuff supports violence. And if we're going to have a nonviolent society, we got to create it from the bottom up and replace all that culture, replace that mindset, and have a truly nonviolent foreign policy. Wouldn't it be fun to figure out what a truly nonviolent foreign policy would look like? What would a truly nonviolent economy look like? How would that differ from what we have now? How would a truly nonviolent criminal justice system be different? And so I've got some quotations I'll post to my blog. We don't have time for them now, but it's powerful that nonviolence is the remedy for the problems that we have. And I want to also debunk the myths that are holding us back. There are a lot of people who say, oh, human nature means we always have to have violence. Oh, as a white person, I'm really entitled to be dominant over people who are not as white as I am. And as a man, I'm entitled to dominate women's decisions about their health and so forth. I mean, this is baloney, but this is so much entrenched that our systems, our culture runs on it. We need to flip all that stuff upside down. Corrupt systems refuse to change. The status quo is so entrenched that it keeps holding us back, and our culture, including powerful political and economic interests, keep promoting myths that trap us in this dysfunctional status quo. Herbert Marcuse wrote, the success of the system is to make unthinkable the possibility of alternatives. So what we need to do is recognize these bold alternatives and make them thinkable, make them, sure, we can have nonviolent national defense. Sure, we can have a partnership society. Sure, we can abolish nuclear weapons through a treaty. We can have universal human rights, and on and on and on. We need to recognize and debunk the commonplace baloney that keeps us trapped in unjust political and economic systems. We need to change our culture in a variety of ways to remove the roadblocks so we can boldly and nonviolently solve the problems. Howard Zinn wrote, democracy is not what governments do, it's what people do. And I mentioned earlier that a guest on my TV program long ago said only 5% of democracy is about voting, 95% of democracy is about grassroots organizing. And here in this country, we think democracy means exactly two political parties, no more than that. Other nations have much better voter turnout because they have a lot better choices. We have lots of parties, and they'll have proportional representation. So their national parliament will include, if you have 5% of the voters chose Green Party, 5% of your national parliament is Green Party, and and so forth. And you get a better discussion of issues and better and wiser decisions. A lot of other nations have much smarter public policies than we have, much more egalitarian, much more fair, better health systems. Our system is trapped by the insurance companies and big pharma that make the United States have very low rankings in the nation's health. We're dozens of ways down the list on health outcomes. So that's my rant on this. Melanie, can you share some of your thinking about debunking the baloney and moving forward to bold solutions instead of those impediments?
Right. So first of all, I think it's important to think in a global sense. I mean, like you said, this country has this better. There's what country should we invade next? Michael Moore's movie. Where he actually went to different countries, and this one is actually better. You go here to Cuba, the healthcare is better. So you want to anyway. It's a great movie. Movies, stories, and movies help us change who we are. In other words, for example, there's a very interesting fact, real quick, For All Mankind. It's on Apple TV. It's basically, instead of the Americans landing first on the moon, it's the Russians, and how that changes history, and how women get the Equal Rights Amendment passed, and then women are doing more things. So it's just, stories are critical, what we tell ourselves. If we say, I can't do it, there's no way, it's impossible, it's always been this way, that's a trap. And you might be doing that as an excuse as well. Kind of check yourself, because you might, say, I'm scared to do something, when in fact, it's not that hard. Everyone can do something to help. And so you can still have a beautiful, wonderful life, not have to break your joy of life or your happiness, and still solve these tough issues that we're facing.
Thanks. Yeah. The kind of boldness that we're talking about here requires grassroots organizing. It will not come as a gift from the top down. It's got to come from the bottom up. And grassroots organizing really is a bold methodology that has been successful over and over and over again throughout history here and around the world. The women's movement was a bottom-up thing, right? the environmental movement, the labor movement, the LGBTQ movement. All of these movements have been very bold, and they've achieved a lot of results from the bottom up. And the U.S. Declaration of Independence and many kinds of nonviolent resistance to English colonial oppression were already making huge progress toward independence, even apart from the Revolutionary War. In the 1950s, 60s, 70s, many nations around the world said, we're tired of being a colony of England or France or Spain or Portugal or whoever. We're going to be independent. And these colonies in the 1950s, 60s, 70s said, screw that colonial crap. We're going to be an independent nation. And when one colony did that, the people in the colony nearby said, geez, if they can do that, we can do that too. And we had dozens of colonies just said, we're done with that crap. We're going to be independent. And historians have referred to this as a revolution of rising expectations. And what we need to be doing on issue after issue after issue is have a grassroots up revolution of rising expectations. And I'll have more information about that to post to my blog. But I like the slogan from the World Social Forum in 2003. They said, another world is possible. We can actually invent and create and organize for the new world that we want. And we can create a new revolution of rising expectations about the climate, women's rights, gay rights, all kinds of things, economic justice, workers' rights. Let's see, we're tight on time. I got to leave out some of my stuff. It'll all show up on my blog. The 1968 French uprising had their own inspiring slogan. They said, be realistic, demand the impossible. And that's a funny way of saying, let's really be bold. Let's say what we really want and not settle for the timid incremental changes that the system wants us to have. And this is even more important today when we face extremely serious climate crisis, escalating danger of nuclear war, and fascism. Outright fascism is escalating in a number of countries, including the United States. We have a lot of people in this country that are promoting fascist remedies and people who are denying the right to have honest elections with votes counted fairly. And this is a big movement underway in this country, and we need to recognize that, and we need to boldly assert honest democracy. Let's see, I'm tight on time. Let me just do a quick time check. Yep, we're tight on time. So I'm posting this to my blog, the video. It's www.parallaxperspectives.org. You can click the TV programs category at that blog, and then click the title of this episode, Choose a Bold, Humane Future. And then you and your friends can watch this at any time, long into the future, from anywhere, even though the TV program will appear only in Thurston County, Washington during the month of November 2022. But that same blog link lets you read the thorough summary or watch the video. I'm also going to be posting to that same blog link a listing of quotations about the topics we're discussing here, and a lot of materials that we've not yet had. The TV programs at the TV programs part of the blog also include Melanie's program about world citizenship, one that I did earlier this year about nonviolent national defense, and another one I did early this year about legal rights for nature. And I want to also remind people to connect with Melanie's group, the Efforts for World Citizenship. There, you can watch the movie through that link and find out more and do other kinds of things. So I want to thank Melanie Bennett for sharing her wise insights and her encouragement. Thank the people who've been watching the interview. And we've got so many serious problems, so many systems are broken that it's easy for people to feel hopeless and powerless and cynical, but that would prevent us from taking the actions that we need to take. So I urge people to recognize we can indeed solve the problems, and we can indeed choose a bold, humane future.
Exactly.
So you can get information about a wide variety of issues related to peace, social justice, and nonviolence through my blog, parallaxperspectives.org. You can phone me at 360-491-9093. We are all one human family. We all share one planet, and we can create a better world, but but we all have to work at it. And the world needs what you have to offer. Thanks so much.